here I am, and tech problems. I think that is the first time in 2.5 years of doing these Facebook lives that I've had such problems. I've had all sorts of problems today. It's been really intermittent. Dear old tech, when it goes well, it's brilliant, and when it doesn't, it plays havoc. So welcome. I don't know if anyone is going to be able to join me live, being 15 minutes late if you're watching this as one of my lives, but obviously if you're watching this on my YouTube channel or as a recorded podcast on my website, then welcome and thank you for listening to this. And indeed, if you're watching it, catching up later on in my Facebook group, thank you for watching and listening. So as you may well know by now, alternate weeks I give you some nutrition in the news information. I pick up information that I think will be of interest and is relevant to you, my lovely followers. And then on alternate weeks, I pick a more mainstream topic to give you something in more detail, information that you can go away, put into practice, modifying whether it's your diet or lifestyle. And that's what I do on alternate weeks. I've just changed things slightly in the last couple of months. So today you may have seen in the heading, or if you read what I was going to talk about earlier on, that's going to talk about B6 deficiency, that it's becoming increasingly more common than it was, and let's talk about that. But first of all, I want to talk about dear old tomatoes and some research around doing some genetic engineering and tweaking the genes, certain genes in tomatoes, to make them vitamin D rich. And do we think that's a good idea or not? You know, do we think we should be messing around with our lovely plants so that it provides more nutritional status to us, or should we just leave nature well alone? Are there benefits to be had? Are there potential side effects? So let me give you a little bit of information. I thought this was really interesting, and my personal take on this. You may have a different take, and I'd love to know your views if you've got something different to say. But I thought this was quite interesting. Now, we know vitamin D is really important to us. We know vitamin D is very important for our immunity. There's research to show that a lack of vitamin D can lead to a rise in autoimmune conditions. Why is it that certain autoimmune conditions, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, is far more prevalent in the northern hemisphere, where we lack our sunshine? Vitamin D status can be quite low. So it's important for autoimmunity. It's important for our immune system overall. It's important for our bones because vitamin D helps the absorption of calcium from our gut and into our bloodstream. So a really, really important vitamin. It's not strictly speaking a vitamin, but it's treated like a vitamin in the body. And we know that the best way to get vitamin D is from sunshine. It's absorbed directly from direct contact on our skin without suntan lotion. It's absorbed very, very well through our skin and into our body. So we know that's the best way to get vitamin D, but we also know that our foods can contain some vitamin D. So let me just give you a bit more information around this article. John Innes Centre in Norwich are doing this research, and they've done some research already around this thing to do with vitamin D in tomatoes. I've explained why we need it. There's an estimate that there's 1 billion people worldwide that could have low vitamin D status. Now, there's low vitamin D status and there's deficient status, and then there's what I would regard as optimal status. You know, we don't just want to be deficient in something, we want optimal levels to really help the body perform at its best. So we know that we need it from whether we get it from the sun or from other means. But let me just explain how much we typically get from our food sources and how much we need. So if you went onto the NHS Choices website and you typed in vitamin D, it would tell you that our daily intake recommended of vitamin D is 400 IU. IU stands for international units. That's how we measure vitamin D. 400 IU. In America, they say 600 to 800. Pharmacists that I've spoken to, I've done a talk for a couple of pharmacists They brought me together to do a couple of talks with them. And when I gave a talk about vitamin D, they say they're actually recommending 1,000 IU. And I think that's the right amount to be recommending, whether it's just through the winter or in fact all year through, because we don't get so much sun. I know the sun is blazing. It's the longest day and it's gorgeous outside, but you go back to May and the weather was pants. So we don't get much sunshine, and we certainly don't get it through the winter months. So what about our food sources? Now, bearing in mind that we need 400 IU, let's say 1,000 IU, what do we get from our foods? Now, this is a fat-soluble vitamin, so we know we can store it in the body, and therefore it's going to be found in our fatty foods, like oily fish, like eggs, like butter, a little bit of meat, but it's from our fatty foods that we get this vitamin. So how much can we typically get? Now, 2 eggs is going to provide about 170 IU. Now, I just mentioned we need 800, 1,000 IU per day, and 2 eggs will provide 170 IU. And other fatty foods is going to be quite similar, which is why we need it from the sunshine. So let's just go back to thinking about what they're doing to tomatoes. Now, what they found is there's this sort of precursor in tomato leaves that if the sun shines on the leaves, it can help the conversion of this precursor into vitamin D. Well, that's all well and good, but we don't eat the leaves, do we? So what they've done is they've tweaked the genes to enable the fruit, the tomato, to be able to also have this precursor that when the sun shines on it can raise vitamin D. In fact, at the moment what they're using is UV, ultraviolet light, to create this. They haven't actually used the true sunshine. So the tomatoes would need to be kept, I guess, in a facility with UV light shining on them in order to produce the vitamin D in the fruit that we eat rather than the leaves in which we don't eat. Now, how much vitamin D are we going to get from the fruit of the tomato? And what we would need to do is one tomato would match the level found in 2 eggs. That sounds quite good, doesn't it? 1 tomato, 2 eggs. And I'm thinking, well, if I really want to aim for 1,000 IU, I'm going to need to eat 6 of these tomatoes every day. Well, that's all well and good, but how expensive are they going to be? Is it the right thing to be producing tomatoes under UV light? I know they're looking now at sunlight, but that's not done yet. You know, what happens when you genetically modify a tomato in order to do this? My view is, why are we wasting valuable research money? We don't get much research money spent on natural healthcare. Why waste it on looking at getting vitamin D from a tomato when actually vitamin D as a supplement is really, really cheap? Now, I'm all for getting our vitamins and minerals naturally from our food, but this isn't natural, and I can't imagine it's going to be cheap to eat it this way. And quite seriously, are we going to remember to eat 6 of these tomatoes every single day? What are they going to taste like? Do we eat much salad through the winter? A lot of people don't. So I just feel it's not a good investment of the research money. It's sort of very novel. It's great to come up with novel ways of helping to keep our vitamin and mineral levels up. But I just don't think that's a good use of valuable research money, and not the best way to be saying it. And Sylvie, well said. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you agree with me. So that's tomatoes, and they're always looking at different ways of doing these things, but you know, it's quite interesting, and I thought I'd mention it to you because you know, we don't get enough research in this space, and it's just not the best use of money in my view. So the next bit of research I want to talk about, some studies around vitamin B6. Now, this was brought to my attention from a Harvard article that identified that from other studies, 13% of American adults are likely to be deficient in B6. So if the Americans are likely to be deficient, there's not that much different going on in the UK diets typically these days. So there's likely to be quite high deficiency amongst British people as well. Now, it's not sexy to talk about B6 like we talk about B12. I've covered B12. It's in the news a lot around B12 deficiency, but I think the B6 deficiency is sort of going under the radar. So I thought I'd raise a little bit about this. Now, B6, like all B vitamins, is water soluble. So I've just talked about vitamin D, fat soluble, stored in the body, which is why for those that get sufficient sunshine, I'm going to talk about why it's important, Sylvie, in a moment, why we can store it through the winter, but you can't with water-soluble vitamins. It's going to be excreted in about 8 hours. So what are its roles in the body? It's involved in over 100 enzyme processes. So it acts like a cofactor, helping enzyme processes to work. This is what makes the body function optimally and function well. And what sort of things does it do? What is it involved in? It's involved in hemoglobin production. So that's really important, isn't it? To do with oxygenation in the body. Antibody production, energy production, helping particularly to convert proteins and fats into ATP energy in the body, needed to make stomach acid, which helps to digest proteins, and stomach acid is also involved in B12 absorption. It's needed by the nervous system, as a lot of B vitamins are. Also involved in immunity, and interestingly, it's involved in the conversion of tryptophan into another precursor that then converts to serotonin. Now, serotonin, talked about this before, a very important neurotransmitter, a brain chemical that helps to keep us happy, keeps our mood up, keeps us calm and in control, but particularly, it's considered our happy hormone. So deficiency signs, it can be muscle cramps, can be low energy, skin conditions like dermatitis has been linked to B6 deficiency, pins and needles going back to the nervous system, depression or irritability going back to that lack of serotonin, anemia linking back to the hemoglobin, and cracks at the corner of the mouth. Those people who sometimes complain of a little crack at the corner of the mouth may be linked to a lack of B6. So if you ever get those, that may be a sign you're not getting enough B6 in your diet. Now, what may deplete it? We'll come on to food sources, but what may deplete it? Alcohol can deplete it, not your glass or two of wine. I'm talking about heavier drinkers. That's going to deplete levels. And I used to just focus on women taking the pill, but as we speak more and more, and my audience speaking more and more around the menopause and going on to HRT, then I have to bring HRT into it. I'm not going to talk about the mechanism here, but estrogen is linked to depleting B6 levels. So if you're younger and on the pill, or if you're slightly older and you're taking HRT, then you need to be thinking about maximizing your intake of food sources for B6. Now, I must stress that getting a B6 deficiency is not common, but I'm just making you more aware that it is on the increase, and we need to be focusing on our foods to make sure we're getting these into our diet every day, because being a water soluble vitamin, we become depleted in 8 hours or so. So our best food sources are really predominantly from our animal sources. So fish, definitely, eggs and poultry, liver, a bit in red meat, but they are very good sources of B6. So if you do eat your animal foods, then you are going to be getting most likely sufficient amounts of your B6 in your diet. It is also found in the whole grains. It's found in the husk. And this is a problem where we eat refined foods. If we're eating white rice, white bread, white pasta, white crackers, that sort of thing, it's going to be, the husk is taken away. And therefore we not only lose our valuable minerals like potassium and phosphorus and magnesium, but we lose B vitamins like B6 as well. So whole grains, so if you're going to eat rice, have brown rice. It's going to be a much richer source of your B vitamins. Also found in pulses, especially chickpeas are found to be quite a rich source. Nuts and seeds, but the amounts in your vegetable sources, plant-based sources, are lower. So for those that are following a more vegan, vegetarian diet. Obviously vegetarian, you can be eating eggs, but particularly now that vegan diets are becoming more popular, vegans need to be far more careful to be getting a variety of foods. Just like I talk about protein sources with vegans, you've got to be looking at, you know, encompassing nuts and seeds and pulses and your whole grains into your diets every day, and lots of them, to get the amount of B6 that you need. And when you add in, if you're on hormone replacement therapy, or you're on the pill, or if you know that you consume too much alcohol and probably you need to cut back, then just be aware that, you know, those things can deplete it. So just a bit of interest for you, focusing on a different vitamin today, aware of the signs, and giving you some information about food sources so that you can, you know, be aware of what you need to be eating. At the end of the day, what this comes back to again and again is wholesome, a natural diet, avoiding your processed foods, varying your food intake as much as possible. Don't rely on just one thing all the time. We shouldn't get deficient. It's, you know, when we're drifting off processed foods, white refined foods, not varying your food intake, stress as well. That stress, I should add in, is actually going to be another problem in keeping your levels up as well. So thank you. Sorry if I'm late tonight. Well, sorry, I am late tonight. And thank you for patience and watching. And next week, I'm going to be focusing on well-being. Thank you, Sylvie. I'm glad you learn a lot. And I know we get opportunities to have lots of other chats as well outside of my Facebook group, which is good. Next week is Wellbeing Week. World Wellbeing Week, UK Wellbeing Week, can't remember, but I'm already putting together hints and tips and lots of ways to boost our mental well-being. So that's what my theme is going to be next Tuesday. Hope you can join me. Take care. See you all soon. Bye.